Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto Was Justice League's Fire Shadow. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So now let's start this video. In Wayne Manor, Bruce was currently awake and doing the usual routine of running the company and making the calls. It was here that he was waiting for someone to show up, someone he had called to come to Gotham for a very important purpose. And it was not long before Alfred appeared and spoke to the billionaire. Master Bruce, Mr. Clark Kent has arrived. Bruce nodded as Clark appeared as the Kryptonian then spoke to the butler. Thanks Alfred. Think nothing of it Mr. Kent, would you like some tea and breakfast? You must be tired from the trip. Clark smiled at the butler as he respected Alfred. After all, even though he did not pry into Bruce's life, he could easily tell that Alfred was more than an employed manservant. He placed that aside for the time being as he spoke to Alfred. Sure, some tea and simple crackers would be nice. Of course. As Alfred left the room, both heroes spoke to one another, with Clark speaking first to Bruce. I heard that the Hokage was here, and I was able to tell Perry about it, so he sent me here to try and get some news on him. That's the official reason I take it. Yeah, the real reason is that he knows who I am Bruce. That got the attention of the billionaire crime fighter as he knew that Clark was very capable of hiding his identity for years since he came to Metropolis. No one who he did not trust and were close to him knew of his dual identity as Superman. But now this unknown hero who had some very strange abilities had actually found Clark out. That was a surprising thought, and as much as he did not want to admit it, Bruce was a bit worried if the Hokage figured that Clark was Superman. There was a chance that he might figure out that he and Batman were one and the same. How exactly did that happen? I have no idea, all I know is that he was able to find out about me only hours after we met. I get the feeling he must have been tracking me for a while, though how he did it without alerting me is shocking. Bruce thought over what he had experienced with the Hokage personally and replied. Not as shocking as you might think, me Tim and Barbara encountered him last night, and I can tell that despite his teenage form, he's a lot more skilled than he looks. The fact was that he had been observing us the whole time we were dealing with a smuggling ring, and the only time we found him was when he chose to reveal himself. That tells me that whoever trained him was a top-notch assassin, since there's no denying that his skills are like that of a ninja. Possibly he must also have a very high level of control over his body, to have been able to avoid your senses, and he possibly had other trainers as well. Both men thought things over as Clark spoke. What else did you find out? Bruce took out one of the recovered shuriken and replied. We recovered this weapon of his from the warehouse when he managed to evade us before I could tag him. This is a traditional ninja shuriken, and it's very well made, good quality steel, and specially sharpened for balance and flight, along with cutting power. This tells me that he did not buy this in some novelty store, he possibly had this custom made, or forged and sharpened this himself. This shuriken is quality work, similar to the same shuriken used by an old foe of mine, so there's no doubt he was very well trained. Clark took the weapon and could see that Bruce was right, he might not know ninjas all that well, but there was no denying that the weapons was very well made. Bruce then spoke to Clark as he recalled that strange but unique ability the man possessed. He also had the ability to manipulate wind to a degree. We were about to capture him when he used some form of weather manipulation to send me and the others back from him. He's a metahuman. That's possible, but we'll leave that for now. If you plan to find out what you can of him, this is the best time for it. If what he did in Metropolis is any indication, he will not be here for long in Gotham. Clark nodded as he decided to take his time and find a chance to finally speak to the blonde Hokage and figure out just how he had found him out. He had no plans to fight the young man, since technically he was not an enemy, but he doubted that Bruce was going to make things that simple or straightforward. The next night, Naruto was busy tracking down some band of crooks just to see how far they were going to go, and he was not the least bit tired yet. He noted something odd about these guys, and that was that while they were acting like regular robbers, what they stole was certainly not regular stuff. A large amount of chemicals and plants if one can believe that, which was enough to tell him that these guys were not your regular thieves. He had spent the morning working on his novel series, and also his manga, and that took most of the morning and afternoon, but as night fell, he decided to go outside and see what was there to do and who he was going to meet. As he watched the thieves move about, he was quite surprised to find them moving into the sewers, and he growled at that. Great, this is one of the times I wished I did not have a nose. That's nothing compared to the view I have to contend with in that old sewer you called your mind. At least you took a different approach, even if I am still in the cage. We're partners, remember Kurama? Now we're going in, who knows, this might get interesting. Right? Naruto followed the thieves, and as he did so, he also made sure to be thankful that his mask managed to at least guard him from some of the smell. How the people could tolerate these things he would never know, but he was not going to waste time arguing as he began to think to himself on what was it these guys were only robbing plants and chemicals. He got his answer as he suddenly spotted them going out of the sewers to go into another one where a massive factory was. And he could see that the factory in question was releasing a fairly bad amount of chemicals into the nearby water. He shook his head and moved after the thieves carefully and once more entered the sewers, much to his disgust, and soon he found them. Only to find them down on the ground and dead, and he saw the marks on their lips that was the sign of poison. That made him raise his eyebrows, and he used his senjutsu again to sense the energy around him even though it was not easy. He felt a chakra signature and sensed one that felt like a fusion of some sort, similar to him when he tapped into nature energy, though there was a plant-like feel to it as well. That was more than enough to tell him that he was dealing with poison ivy this time around. He sighed mentally and headed off to track her down and stop her. He had no idea who owned this place, but considering what he had seen thus far, it was clear to him just what Ivy had in mind for the people who worked in the factory. He however could not help but mentally whistle at the sight of the woman, as images of the woman did not do her justice. One thing was sure, the femme fatale tag that was given to her was well deserved, especially considering her ability to kill with a touch or kiss when she wanted to do so. He got closer and also could see that she was carrying a container of sorts, enough to make him guess that she was soon going to make her move on her foes, and now he was going to make his move. What the heck are you doing here? Oh, this is new. I was expecting Batman and his little posse to deal with me this time around, but I had been keeping myself under the radar the whole time. Now it seems that I have a new visitor. The woman turned and saw the Hokage, and Naruto had to raise his eyebrow a bit behind his mask, as the woman spoke once more. You're certainly not Batman, nor Robin, nor Nightwing as the older one calls himself now. And before you say anything, I know who you are, Hokage. Have you now? Well, you can bet that I am not going to let you do what you like. Poison Ivy smirked and replied. I guess that, but apparently you are not very familiar with who I am or what I can do. Now let's see how you deal with my babies. Naruto knew what that meant as he did read her profile, but decided to play the naive guy first, as he had an idea on playing some tricks on the woman. That was why he allowed himself to be restrained by the vines that came out of the ground nearby. Poison Ivy smiled a bit as she walked over to the restrained Hokage, and enjoyed the chance to finally have someone else in her clutches for a change of pace. She was expecting Batman to try and stop her from using her special seeds to attack the water supply of a factory that was poisoning the waters near a plot of land that she felt would be a great site for some wild plants that were very rare in her mind. But instead of the Dark Knight, it was this guy who apparently was not all that familiar with her powers and abilities. Such a shame. The Hokage tried to free himself from her vines as she decided to end him once and for all. She reached for his face, and with him being affected by her neural toxin, she was able to remove his mask. The man was rather handsome, young-looking, and she had to admit that the whisker marks on his face made him have a fear look. The guy looked at her with deep blue eyes that also seemed to have a strange but attractive quality in them, so she had to admit that killing someone like him was a waste, but she was not going to be dissuaded in her mission by anyone. The guy struggled and she held him by the face and spoke seductively. You should not struggle so much. Take heart in the fact that your last kiss in this life is coming from me, and for you, I will make your death slow. The young man glared and she kissed him and allowed her poison to flow into him. She felt his struggles begin to slacken, and when she moved back, the guy looked at her, and she saw his eyes glow in defiance, and soon faded away as his head dropped to his chest. She sighed and spoke to herself. Shame you had to die handsome, but I have my mission. You can release him, my darlings. The vines did what she asked and she walked off to do her work, but she was about to discover something about her foe that was totally unexpected. She then heard his voice again, and that stopped her right in her tracks in utter shock. Not a bad kiss, Ivy-chan, but I think that you are using too simple a kissing technique. Have you considered trying a French kiss instead of just pressing your lips? That might work a lot better than you think. Pamela turned around and was shocked to see the man she had kissed and see drop dead, was now standing up there before her alive and grinning in a very amused fashion, as he moved closer to her. She thought of using her crossbow, but before she could do that, there was a loud screech of metal, and she looked at her weapon, and found out that the triggering mechanism was destroyed by a large metallic needle. She tried to use her fist, but when she tried to slug him, he moved very fast and literally faded from view. What the? Not even Batman is that fast. Nice try, Ivy-chan, but you need to move faster than that. I only allowed your plants to catch me to have an idea of your skills, and while you get an A for the seduction bit, you failed in some others as well. She turned and tried to spot her foe and shouted. How can you be alive? My kiss can kill any man. Well, as you have found out, I am no ordinary man, and if you think I am pulling your chain, why don't I kiss you for a change? That surprised the female supervillain, as no one was crazy enough to try kissing her of their own free will. But somehow this guy was immune to her kiss, which was impossible as she was the only one able to make the antidote for all the poison she unleashed with her lips. She turned and there was the man before her, grinning once more, and before she could react, he kissed her, and he was not dropping dead at all. His kiss was light, and yet it seemed to be strong and masculine, and that had a very interesting effect on her, as he pressed his lips a bit more on her own, and he still was not dropping dead at all. She even felt him lick her lips as well with his tongue. He then replied in a very teasing tone, as if he could sense that he had somehow knocked her senseless. Come on, Ivy-chan, put some more power in the kiss. You're not getting flustered by the fact that I am a man who's immune to your kiss of death, are you? She pushed him away and he laughed gently and spoke in a teasing tone. You're getting flustered. You're blushing so hard your face is like a rose like your hair. That adds to the beauty you've already got, you know. Care to try again, Ivy-chan? I promise I'll show you how to kiss better if you let me. Ivy did not wait to try and figure things out as she shouted as her plants began to react to her emotions. No. I will not accept this. Stop him, my darlings. The plants moved at their mistress's commands, and Naruto managed to avoid them, and this time around he was not going to let Ivy's pets get to him. He quickly took out one of his swords and began to cut down the vines that were trying to get to him. He saw that Ivy was looking at him in utter horror and confusion. The first emotion was not doubt, since he was killing her plant pets, and the second emotion was there due to the fact that he was still alive. Truth be told, the reason or rather reasons that he was still alive was his more than ample vitality, bloodline, senjutsu training, and the chakra given to him by Kurama. But he was not going to reveal that for any reason as he was enjoying the situation a little too much. Poison Ivy was still sending the vines at him, and he cut them down until he decided to make a move as he suddenly faded from the view of Ivy. She backed away, only to bump into him as she turned around to backhand him. Naruto ducked the attack and was soon before Ivy, and he quickly kissed her again. Once more Ivy was shocked to see that he was not dropping dead or screaming in pain from the toxin she normally would have unleashed via contact, and it was becoming difficult for her to react. Naruto then spoke to her huskily into her ear as he broke the contact with her lips. You know, I can respect the whole idea of protecting nature and all that, but I am still going to stop you, since what you are going to is going to kill people. You think killing them is going to be the answer? Ivy looked at Naruto darkly as she replied. They are harming the environment. Killing nature. You think that you can do better than what I am doing? You'll be surprised what being less violent can bring you, Ivy-chan. I know all there is about you and what you used to do and who you used to be. You're taking this love for nature a little too far, don't you think? Ivy snorted and tried to launch another series of kicks at Naruto, who could see that despite her experience, she had not ever faced anyone who could fight her without being hampered by her poisons. All the while, she spoke to him and she was frowning a great deal as she was no doubt getting annoyed by the fact that she was not yet able to hit him. What do you care? No doubt you think you can exploit nature just like them. They ignore the fact that this world is fragile and they can do what they like. I am the only one who can protect nature. She deserves to be protected. And you think killing is going to do that? Especially when you consider the fact that what you will do can kill people who are not part of your plans. You think that your attack will only target the ones you want in this factory. What happens when innocent people are poisoned in the long run or killed by what you intend to do? The factory workers there have no idea about what their company is doing, and they are only working there to earn money to pay for their bills, pay their taxes, feed house and clothe their families. They deserve to die just for doing what they can to take care of their families, and give a future for them. Naruto stopped attacking Ivy at this point as she looked back at him as he spoke seriously. You may target those who you feel commit crimes towards nature, but have you ever considered the fact that you could also be attacking people who either do not know it, or were just trying to go about with their lives, and had no idea about it? I know about the accident that gave you your powers, but I can bet that there was a cost to it as well. If there is something I learned in my life, there's always a cost to having power. You don't know what you are talking about. Leave me alone. I know that your accident denied you ever being able to have kids, and I know that the idea of never being able to have children is a fate most if not all women think is worse than death. Because losing the ability to have children takes away the ability to bring new life into the world, which is why women are the ones who are able to have children, and it's never the men who can do that. That's why you care deeply for nature. You care for plants because they are the only things you can nurture and grow yourself. They're taking the place of those who you could have called your family, aren't they? You protect nature because you want to be able to feel like a mother when you can never be one yourself. Ivy glared at him and then lashed out with the plants once more. Naruto however evaded them and he replied. I struck a nerve, didn't I, Ivy-chan? Shut up. You don't know anything about me. Naruto moved and grabbed her fist and replied. I might not know you, but I do know how important nature is. If you want me to prove my point, then let me show you. Ivy did not understand why, but he was serious, and she replied. If you're lying to me, I'll make you regret it, even if you are indeed immune to my poisons. Naruto nodded and then spotted a dying plant in a pot, no doubt left behind, and was already nothing more than a shriveled little thing in poor soil. It was the perfect test subject for his little demonstration, and he took it before him as he sat down cross-legged. Ivy watched as Naruto focused into himself, and accessed the growing reserve of purified chakra he got from Kurama. The energy was still very potent, and Kurama was willing to part with portions of it once in a while, and his hands were coated in deep blue chakra energy. What the? Ivy was surprised as she suddenly saw the glowing energy coming from the Hokage's hands, and it seemed to make the air feel alive for some reason. She felt her body somehow react to the energy in a rather pleasant way, and she looked to see that her plant seemed to be calmed by the energy. But what really got her attention was the plant that Naruto had found, as Naruto placed his hands with the energy on either side of the plant. The once dead and decaying thing actually began to grow again. The eco-terrorists watched in shock as the plant began to gain new life. The bark became healthy again, the branches grew longer and stronger, leaves sprouted out, and beautiful violets came from the plant. In a few moments, what was once a dead and gone plant that made her furious at humans who cared little for life was brought back to life by this man. Naruto grinned a bit as he took the plant and channeled some more yang chakra into the soil, to make it more healthy. He then got up and moved to a stunned Ivy, and gave her the blooming plant as he spoke next to her. Here you go, Ivy-chan, I think this plant will do well under your care. Ivy touched the plant, trying to see if the whole thing was some illusion and she was being tricked, but there was no trick at all. She could sense that the plant before her was truly healthy and blooming. The soil that was in the pot also felt different. The soil seemed to be alive and tingled with energy, and could be strong enough to sustain the plant for months, despite the fact that it should be already barren. She studied the plant again and again, and seeing that the plant was indeed real, she looked at Naruto and spoke. How did you do this? Naruto grinned and replied. Now that would be telling Ivy-chan, after all even a man has got to have some secrets, right? What I can say is that the energy I have is unique to me, and when I use it, I can affect life and nature itself in a positive way. Care to feel it as well, Ivy-chan? Naruto gently placed his hand on Ivy's cheek, and to the Radiant's surprise, the energy that she felt from the Hokage's hand seemed to make her feel a level of warmth and sensation that felt very pleasant, almost to the point that she actually moaned. She realized that in a moment and looked at Naruto, who grinned a bit more, and even gave her a very knowing smirk. You like that, don't you, Ivy-chan? Ivy looked at him and spoke seriously. How are you able to do all of that? Are you a metahuman? No, though I have no clue what metahuman means just yet, but as you can guess, I'm not your average human. You know, if you want to make a contribution to nature, you make sure to get people on your side for once, instead of scaring the living daylights out of them or killing them. I mean seriously, Ivy-chan, you have a lot of power already, but you can't expect people to change their ways right off the bat. The more you fight like a terrorist, the more likely you make enemies. Try having some allies on your side for a bit, see how it goes, since the more allies and less enemies you have, the better off you might be in the long run. You expect me to side with the people who are taking nature for granted. Not all people take nature for granted, you know. Some of them know that if nature gets ruined, then where will they go from here? There are people who care about nature as much as you do, and despite that they are not always listened to, they do get things done. Just try to defeat your foes without killing them. I kill my foes too, of course, but only when I have to protect my precious people, or to keep innocent people from being hurt. Besides, if you have the law on your side and not on their side, wouldn't it be a lot easier for you to do what you want and defend nature, since at least you don't have to worry about Batman and the cops as well as the government? Ivy thought it over and had to admit that the Hokage did have a point there. It was at times easier if the law was on one side, and not digging its talons into the sides of said person. And while she was a radical, there were others like her, like those men and women, willing to give the Japanese fishermen a serious headache when they go for harpooning whales. She did not really have a deep liking for whales, but she understood the reasons behind their actions, and she could respect their willingness to risk being labeled as pirates. And while they had to follow the laws when they carried a flag of another nation on their missions, those same laws prevented them from being prosecuted on sight by their foes, since they did not want to cause an international incident. However, that still left the blonde before her as she spoke towards him. And what about you, Hokage? What exactly are you going to do with me? Naruto replied with a smirk. Obviously, I am only going to stop you from killing people, even if they are guilty of what you feel are crimes against nature. If you try to fight them without killing them unless you have to, that might not bother me too much. But when you harm innocent people in your vendetta intentionally, that when the kid gloves are off, Ivy-chan. And truth be told, compared to the others I have dealt with, you are going to be in serious trouble with them than just me. I pretty much leave you to your own devices unless you cross the line. I might like nature, but I am not going to kill people intentionally for it, since you forget that people are part of nature's plans too, even if humans are the dangerous ones. There are humans who can save nature too, just like you, though not to that level. I'm not exactly human anymore, you do know that, right? Yeah, but you have the heart of a human. You can be a force of nature for sure. Heck, by all rights, you could be ranked as a nature goddess with those powers of yours, but you have a human mind, body, heart and senses. And humans know when to punish and when to nurture. You might have gotten these powers at an accident, but you can use them to protect and heal, just as much as you can harm and kill. If you can become more than you are and have allies on your side, I have a feeling your mission will be less difficult. Plus you can recover what it means to care for all life, not just plants. Naruto then grinned a bit more perversely as he replied. Besides that, I can help you in another fashion. Ivy raised her eyebrow as he moved forward and whispered into her ear. I could let you experience what it means to be a beautiful woman who is attractive to a man, Ivy-chan. And that means in a very physical fashion if you feel so inclined. That got Ivy to blush bright red to the point her face was like a rose, and she looked at him in shock as he smiled even more. Did I get you hot and bothered by any chance, Ivy-chan? Please say yes. You can't possibly be serious. Naruto grinned and replied as he moved to Ivy once more, and she did not react negatively as he traced her lips with his finger. Oh, but I'm Ivy-chan, after all. I am quite possibly the only man at this point who is immune to your toxins and poisons, as well as your pheromones. But I doubt you need the last power to get my attention on you, and there's the fact that I am not an enemy of yours unless you make me into one. I also have the power to nurture nature as well as caring for it as you do, though in a more moderate fashion. Plus, my skills can help you gather all the evidence you need to nail enemies to the wall. And there's the fact that I have a lot of experience when it comes to making women very happy as well. You might not be able to have a chance to be a mother in the human way, but that hardly means you can't be a woman in the human way either. Naruto stopped to let that all sink into Ivy's head, and he replied as he could see that she had taken it all in. Now then, if you plan to go ahead with your previous intent, I am going to fight seriously, and you can bet Ivy-chan that this might not end well for you, since you can't defeat me with poisons and toxins, and as you have seen, I am not in the same league as Batman. Or you can call this off and take what I suggested into consideration, and if you need convincing, then I am more than willing to do just that. Later. As Naruto got out of the sewers, he swore that he was going to clean up and shower after all that. He had smelled pretty horrid things before, but a Gotham sewer was one experience he had no intention of repeating. But at least he managed to stop Ivy from her plans and hopefully made her change her ways. He doubted that one night was going to cut it, but there was no sense in trying it outright. Besides, he was not joking about letting Ivy have some male company for once in her life. After all, he was not an enemy of hers unless she did something that could harm innocent people. He respected nature in a fashion that was similar to her. And he was naturally immune to her poisons and toxins, so dying from her touch or kiss would not happen anytime soon. Besides, he would have to admit that the idea of being intimate with someone that good-looking and dangerous had a very nice charm to it. That was something that Kurama commented on. You certainly stepped into it now, brat. I can't believe you actually want that to happen between the two of you. I gave my word after all, Kurama, and you know me, I back my words with action. HMPH. I know that, kid. That's the reason you and I have managed to work together well for the past many years, and the reason I learned to respect and even like you. Still, you have grown some serious balls, as you humans call it. You do know that if it was not for the facts that your Uzumaki bloodline gives you the vitality and stamina, your senjutsu training which you have been working on like mad, and my ability to heal you of injury and sickness, her kiss could have killed you, right? I know and I like it, and I can certainly enjoy showing her how to use those charms of her better. Kurama laughed at that and replied. And you have the gall to call me a pervert? You're turning into a pervert who flirts with women who try to kill you. I personally find that to be a weird balance between brave and suicidal. Naruto laughed at that and moved on while switching back to his senjutsu mode to scan the area around him, and he could not help but smirk in surprise when he felt a very familiar chakra signature, and then 3 familiar ones. Well now, we have company, Batman, Robin, Batgirl, and Superman. They no doubt are trying to track us down, Kurama. Figures they would be interested. You left the impression after all on them, so, any plans yet? Let them make a first move and we string them along, see how far they are willing to go to try and get us. Don't you mean you? Keep in mind you have not exactly told them about me, and the fact that it makes you a Jinchuriki, remember? And I will not unless something convinces me to tell me otherwise. Besides, telling them I got a demon fox inside me ain't exactly common knowledge around here yet. Plus they'll either think I am joking or I deserve to be in the loony bin. And no way am I going to let myself get locked up with the nuts that call that place home. Bruce looked through some special binoculars and spoke to both Tim and Barber. Looks like our Hokage friend has gone away from the sewers. Tim raised an eyebrow at that and replied. What could he have been doing in there? Barber shook her head and replied. Don't know, but that's where the thieves were supposed to have been seen going to last time I checked the reports. The fact they were acting like that must mean they were being controlled. Don't bother with that, I looked through the sewers, the crooks are there and they look poisoned. That man decided to check the bodies out later. If what he had seen on the stolen list was accurate, then that meant Poison Ivy was on the move again. As much as he liked nature due to his time traveling and training, he did not like the extremes that Ivy did to protect it. He personally disliked it when she nearly killed his friend Harvey Dent before he turned into Two-Face, nor when she nearly turned Alfred into a plant-human hybrid. He then had an idea as he took out one of his tracers and gave it to Superman and spoke. How good were you in baseball? Superman looked a bit confused for a moment and then nodded in agreement as he was quickly able to grasp just what was it that Bruce had in mind. He pitched his arm up and managed to weigh in how much strength he needed for the distance, and how to avoid injuring the man, as well as allowing the tracer to latch onto him without becoming a bullet. Not too hard for him to do when one considered the fact that Clark had a very advanced brain and the power to use said brain as well. He tossed it, and soon the tracer sailed through the air, propelled by the Kryptonian strength, and he saw it with his microvision, as it managed to land on the code of the Hokage. Just as the man took off and he replied to Bruce. Got him. That was the cue for the rest of them to go after the Hokage as the man was now on the move. Perhaps they could finally get the answers they were in need of. Later, the four of them managed to track down the Hokage to a hotel, and as soon as they were there, Bruce nodded that now was the time to go in and find the man. But once they got there, he was out, no doubt going to grab a meal of some sort, as it was the right time for dinner. This allowed them to look the place over. Bruce entered the hotel room that was owned by the Hokage, and wondered just what the status was of this masked hero when it came to financing. The apartment might not be high class, but to be able to be here in a well-known hotel in good comfort, suggested that the guy was well-funded, and therefore was not to be taken lightly. He was also curious about the way his weapons were made, as the recovered ninja stars were authentic, and were not like the kind of things one found in a novelty store. He was not alone in this search as Robin, Batgirl, and Superman were there with Clark scanning the place. They all had taken a very strong interest on the man. Clark to find out more of this man who had managed to find out his identity. Barbara was curious on what was the guy's story, and Robin wanted to see if this guy was as good as Bruce without him using those powers of his. Bruce looked at the room and suspected that the guy was hiding more than just his identity, as he looked over the drawers, as he did not help but feel that something was going on. It was a feeling in his mind and gut, and if there was one thing his training had taught him, it was to trust at times the feelings in his gut. That was when they discovered the tracer on the code of the Hokage, with a note in it. They took the note and read it. Hello there. I figured you would find this hotel room of mine sooner or later, Batman, and no doubt that your companions are with you, and I wager to guess old Big Blue Superman is with you too. You might be wondering how I know Superman is with you, right? Let's just say that someone with his more than unique energy signature is pretty darn hard to miss, especially for a guy like me. Couple that with his ability to see through things except lead, you would have found me already, only I knew you were coming, so I decided to scram in a very different fashion and leave something, and your team might be able to hear people coming a mile away. But I have learned some techniques that trump the training, and no, I am not going to tell, so don't bother asking. Anyhow, it was not unexpected you would find me, so I decided to make myself scarce. If there's one thing I learned in my more than interesting life that kept me from being buried in a coffin, is to always have a backup plan. And I recommend you forget trying to find the tailor of my coat, just in case you think to find him, and question who he made it for, because like that letter I gave Superman, that coat's about to go bye-bye. See ya. Hokage. That was the only warning that Batman and the others had as the jacket suddenly began to burn, and soon was reduced into nothing but a pile of ash, along with the tracer. That was enough to tell Bruce and company that their chance to find him was long dead and gone, and with the room's fire alarm going off from the smoke coming from the ruined jacket, there was going to be too many people in the area for them to get a precise idea where the Hokage had gone. Clark had to shake his head and spoke to the others. How the heck did he find out that I was around? Bruce shook his head at that and replied. I am not very sure on how he did it, but it seems that we are going to have to leave before we're found out. Tim, can you come back here and find out just who rented the room? Already on it first thing tomorrow morning, I want to find out just who this guy really is. Clark had a feeling that it was not going to be that simple as he looked at the now reduced pile of destroyed cloth, as they soon got out of the room before hotel security came into the room. Outside, Naruto grinned a bit as he was a very fair distance away from the hotel that he had left his coat in. It was sad that he had to lose that coat, but that was why he always carried spares in his scrolls. He then moved away from the place and was happy that he secretly planned an escape route out of the hotel in advance. After all, that was not his real base of operations, and he was going to his real base right now. The blonde shinobi moved quickly over the buildings and resorted to using his kunai with the wires, and soon arrived near an old steel mill that was left behind by the company that once owned it, and it was outside of the city limits. This was his real base of operations, and he had made it as comfortable as he could, and the metal there, while old, was useful for making spare weapons. He had been friends with Tenten, and she did teach him on how to make his own weapons and gear, so why the company left behind good quality metal was something he was confused with. And since this place was deemed off limits and no longer of any value, it was going to destroy it in a month from now, more than ample time for him to make the place his base while in Gotham. And when they demolished it, the city government was going to unwittingly erase any trace of him ever being there in the first place. They'll lose and his gain, he supposed, and as he went in, he decided to make sure that before the last week was over, he was going to make things very interesting before he left the city. The rest of next week for Naruto was downright entertaining, as he had managed to avoid getting on the radar of Batman and company, while tangling against Selina Kyle. The woman was certainly a lot better prepared than last time they met, and she was more than willing to go all out to try and evade him when she finally robbed someone. The reason he was able to locate her was namely due to his senjutsu training and how to sense chakra. After sensing Selena's chakra energy signature and narrowing it down, he now was able to track her, but she was not going to make it the least bit easy. She apparently had been busy getting herself into tip-top shape, and they were soon moving over the rooftops, and there was no doubt in his mind that they had to be careful since Batman might be around. The first day of the between them had her stealing a golden scepter with jewels from a businessman's private collection, and he was able to arrive before anyone arrived on site, and soon the chase was on. The distance to the place where he would not chase her was fairly long, so she was going to push it as much as she could. Naruto and Selena had a heck of a race between them, and as they faced one another, the female thief was really giving Naruto a very interesting time, as she did what she could to fight him off or evade him. But it was not long before he managed to switch her sachet bag with another one of the same make, which turned out to be filled with a cat plush toy this time. Selena found out about the switch when she checked the bag as he appeared right in front of her, while hanging upside down on the roof of the building that she had tried to hide in. The woman knew that as per the agreement between them, she was going to reveal her face. Once she did so, Naruto whistled wolfishly and called her one very attractive woman, and he was impressed at how she managed to keep herself this good looking. He then returned the golden specter to the owner, though in this case, the man turned out to have been something of the fencer for some wild cats that was supposed to be off limits. That was more than enough to explain just why Selena targeted the man. Naruto had some entertainment at the end of it, when he spotted none other than Bane, who was currently going in to fight Batman and his group, though the three had to deal with Bane's goons, as the man was currently running a drug-running business. The man was certainly large, and despite the size, this guy certainly knew how to move and fight, and while Batman seemed to be a bit troubled, he was more than willing to go all out to fight the muscle-bound criminal. He did not interfere yet as he wanted to see just how Batman would do in this kind of a fight. And he was not the least disappointed as Batman finally proved to be as capable as before, despite the fact that at times, Bane tossed him around like a rag doll. Robin and Batgirl were there as well, and he could not help but nod in respect at the way the two fought alongside Batman, though his eyes were locked in on Batgirl, as he wolf-whistled mentally at the way she moved. He was very interested in using her as a new character in his novel series, once he was out of the area before he was going to be found out. But not before seeing the team defeat Bane and allow the man to taken away by the police, and no doubt going back to that lovely place Arkham Asylum. On the next day, Naruto decided to get to work writing on his newest novel, and he was more than willing to use what he had been doing or rather done so far, with both Ivy and Selena. His very much accepted perverted nature already going into overdrive as he wrote the stories that involved Selena and Pamela, as well as himself. Though he usually changed the names and also made sure to make some alterations to make things a lot more interesting, and avoid arousing the ire of said ladies. He was very interested to see just how the people were going to react the very second these stories came out into circulation. And once he was done, he was off to finally continue the next phase of his competition, with the gorgeous Selena Kyle as night fell. However, along the way he ran into one really oddball but still attractive woman who rode one really weird contraption if he ever saw one, and that was saying something, since he had seen his fair share of crazy contraptions back home. The blonde spotted the woman known as Roxy Rocket, a daredevil stunt woman who had way too many close calls, and was an adrenaline junkie to the extreme. The woman had managed to do a daring robbery and was cruising along the streets, scaring the living daylights out of people, as he managed to keep out of sight and get dressed. The Gotham PD tried to chase her and stop her rampage, but it was also here that Naruto appeared. Roxy was a bit surprised at the appearance he made, namely since he was currently in his wind armor jutsu, but tried to play chicken with him, and even gave him a kiss and a dare to catch her. The blonde was not in the mood to play catch the woman, so he decided to put an end to this chase. He quickly fired a pair of shuriken into the engine, and that slowed Roxy down, allowing him to get ahead of her, and then intercept her with a quick mid-air grab, as he then moved to fire one of his wire-armed kunai, and then swing over to the nearby sign. He placed her down and then spoke to her about trying to get herself turned into a proverbial smear on the wall, which was the fate of her little right as it was now burning on the wall. The woman however didn't seem to mind and even tried to come onto him. Apparently she got a rush facing him in aerial fighting, and was even asking him if he had a girlfriend. Naruto didn't know whether to laugh or snort. Sure, Roxy was interesting and certainly a sight, but she was a bit odd in his mind. And that was saying something since Naruto had a very long history of meeting people who were beyond borderline crazy. He decided to partially lie and say that he was seeing someone, to which Roxy asked if his girlfriend was as wild and interesting as she was. To which he replied she was. That did not make Roxy change her tune however, as she replied that she was going to prove that she was a lot wilder. Naruto snorted a bit, and despite Roxy being charming, which was not too hard to do with the way she dressed, he finally managed to restrain her and leave, just as the cops came in. The woman reminded a bit too much of Anko, who actually flirted with him a number of times, even though he was technically married. Though unlike Roxy, Anko knew when not to push her luck and merely enjoyed the company. He also evaded the police and soon was out of sight. As night fell, Naruto managed to move out and evade the police patrols, and soon used his senjutsu training. He soon found Selena and soon found her, stealing a golden cat mask from the Gotham Museum, and off she went, forcing him to follow. This time, however, he was not alone in the pursuit, though it was the GPD, and soon he and the police were closing in on Selena. The cops had a hard time in keeping up with Selena as he watched from the sidelines, but the blonde thief then managed to enter a series of abandoned apartments, and soon the police were forced to search the place building by building. That was more than good for Naruto, as he was in senjutsu mode and tracking Selena. The two of them met, and this time, instead of fighting him, Selena tried to take the seduction route, and boy was she unleashing the charm this time around. The two chased one another, and despite the decrepit conditions of the apartments, they were doing alright. At one point, the blonde thief actually decided to kiss him a bit while rubbing her body on his body, more than enough to get him interested. She even ran his hands on his thighs, a first on his part. She even tried to place his hands on her breasts of all things, and he was not going to complain, as Selena was really hamming it up. Not to mention that she was even willing to use her tongue on him on a few instances, as she also tried to get away from him when she could while evading the police. That was more than enough to tell Naruto that she was really willing to do what she could in order to get away from him. He was not far behind in the seduction game, as he was more than willing to give as good as he got. When she thought she had evaded him, he would appear and whisper into her ear from behind, while gently smacking her well-shaped butt at the same time. That action he did made her cry out a bit at his willingness to do that, and briefly glare at him, before trying to reverse the whole thing. She would even try to use her whip at him, but he merely gave her smiles and playful cat calls. He even managed to catch her whip, and then pull her to him, and he would catch her and shamelessly rub his face on her bus. That was more than enough to make Selena gasp at his actions, as this was something she had not expected. He even placed his thigh between her legs, making her raise an eyebrow at him for his actions. This went on for a while until Selena escaped after managing to tie him up and left, unaware of the fact that Naruto had managed to get into her sachet halfway through their little romp through the apartments, and place in a simple but very cute cat-themed mask, which she had managed to buy from before. As she left, he freed himself and finally surprised Selena and the peer by revealing the switch, and she groaned a bit as she knew what that meant. The next day, they were on their date, and it was rather interesting as Naruto decided to dress nice for the occasion. After all, this was a date and he had to look his best for his date. He did that with his wives when he went with them on either single dates or in group dates. The only difference he made was to make his hair move down and not be spiky. He dressed in a simple but very classy dress suit, and Selena appeared wearing a white dress with simple but elegant high-heeled shoes, and had a purse as well. He managed to get them into one of the more popular restaurants in Gotham, and soon it was a date which was rather nice. Selena actually stated that despite his change in hairstyle, he was not bad looking, and while she asked him if he was sure that he could tolerate being seen with her, since he was technically a teenager and she was older than him, he laughed a bit. He then replied that considering the modern world's view of things, there was nothing too wrong about this sort of thing, and despite his young look, he was a lot older than she realized. That comment naturally made Selena raise her eyebrow at the comment, but decided to let the whole thing. The two of them began to enjoy the day, and despite the fact that there were some comments directed at him by the men inside in hearing range, and the same to Selena, it was not all bad. The woman managed to tell him about the events that led to her fascination with cats, and her love for all kinds, either domesticated or wild. Naruto decided to also trade a bit of his own history, namely how he actually enjoyed gardening, and also working with some animals. He even mentioned that incident with the cat that belonged to the feudal lord's wife, and how the thing had given him and his friends a hell of a chase. Selena could not help but picture the sight of that and be slightly amused, but that amusement only grew when Naruto explained just how wily the cat was, and how it had tried countless times to turn his face into confetti, and also make him go way off the mark. The blonde shinobi also spoke about the tiger he and Hikaru eventually called friend, and traveled with, as well as his encounters with other creatures. Naruto then mentioned that despite things he actually had an affinity to toads and foxes, making Selena amused considering the fact he had used a frog puppet to fool her the first time they had met one another. Naruto did not reveal anything else about himself, but merely used a cover name, going by the name of Nathan Stein, who had stayed in Japan for a number of years, and recently returned to America, to get used to seeing the world after being in Japan for so long. To prove it, he even used his real language, which was certainly Japanese to the ear of most people, something that Selena nodded to. This went on for a while as Selena explained that while she knew that being caught was always a danger as a thief, she lived for the thrill it gave her, and she relished the chance to show her abilities, as well as gain gold things to enhance her lifestyle. But she also pointed out that she took care to avoid engaging the police and law enforcement, as well as avoiding harming people, unless she had no other choice. And even if she did get forced into a situation where violence was her only chance, she would not make a mistake and kill someone even if it was accidental. That was because she disliked killing unless there was no other alternative, and the fact was that if she killed someone, I would only make things worse for her. And she used the money to obviously fund charitable causes, and to help the animals she grew fond of. As dinner came, both of them enjoyed the meal, and before they parted at the end of the night, Naruto told her that he was looking forward to the last day, and she nodded as she did find him charming, but not that charming. To which Naruto took no offense, and soon they were off to their respective hideouts. As night fell, the chase was on between them, though this time around, Selena took to robbing what was a priceless painting from a collection piece. Naruto had to admit that the choice of target was new until he learned that not only was the painting valuable, but it had the images of Bast and Sekhmet on them, two Egyptian goddesses with cat heads on human bodies. That was enough to make Kurama comment that this Selena woman took her love of felines a little too far, to which Naruto had to agree as they were now moving after Selena. And this time, the blonde female thief was going all out on trying to lose him. They were moving from the vault where she stole the painting and into the social district of Gotham. No doubt she was trying to use the place to lure him off her trail. If she could not evade him, fight him, or seduce him, then she was going to distract him in a very different fashion. The sights and sounds were certainly a step up from what he was used to, and he had to be careful, since he had to avoid being seen as well. He had to give Selena credit for the deception, and this time around, he was going to have to be careful, since it turned out that the woman had decided to cover herself with some form of scent masking on her outfit. She really went all out, and he could guess that the idea of dressing up for him for picture taking was not something she had in mind. But he was not going to give up any time soon as he pursued Selena, relying on his senjutsu to track her down. But it was here that a number of thugs decided to attack one of the nearby theaters, and that was enough to force Naruto to stop and go in to find out what was going on. Apparently a number of the wealthy Gotham class were watching a brand new show, and the thugs intended to rob them. This was enough to make him stop and get into the act, as the people were being forced to give up their money, jewels, credit cards and the like, though why would the people carry those he would never know. The thugs were also interested in holding the performer prisoner, a drop-dead gorgeous raven-haired woman in some seriously attractive female stockings, and a rather interesting-looking suit. He saw that the name of the performer was Atana, and when he directed his senjutsu senses he was surprised to find that she had a bonfire of chakra in her, as well as a level of energy that he did not recognize well enough. This woman had some serious powers and apparently was not using them yet, and some of the thugs were interested in her, but instead of cowering, the woman fought back like a cornered tigress. This was enough to make Naruto step in as he quickly tossed one of his special kunai to appear into the front of the thugs and Satana, as he launched himself at them with serious attacks on them all. That surprised the people in the audience as they had thought Batman and his team were there. Naruto could see that none of the thugs were that skilled, and he wiped the floor with them quickly enough. But one of them managed to get up and grab the magician from behind. He placed a knife on her throat, and that made Naruto all the more annoyed as he knew that this was not good, and the police would not arrive in time, plus Selena was getting away. But he was surprised this time around as Atana used her wand and aimed upward to create a powerful blast of powder in the face that was precise. The man began to scream in pain and clutch his nose and eyes as Atana then gave the guy a solid kick to the balls, making Naruto raise an eyebrow, enough to distract him as another thug got up despite the beating to clobber him with a chair. Satana turned waved her wand a bit, making Naruto realize that the energy he sensed was active, and he turned to see the man being tied up by ropes. Where those ropes came from he had no idea, but he was impressed. He turned to Satana and asked her if she was fine, and the magic user replied, "I'm alright, you're the Hokage aren't you? Saw me on TV, Miss Satana." "Yep, got to say that the change in wardrobe is nice. Anyway, thanks for your help here. Didn't think anyone was this crazy to attack. Money can make you do strange things. Anyway, got to go. Hope to meet you again, Miss Satana, and nice kick by the way." The raven-haired magician smirked and replied, "Just because I look like this doesn't mean I am helpless. Had previous experience creeps like them. And I hope to meet you again too, you've got some serious powers." And afterwards, Naruto went on with the chase, and despite the distance between him and Selena, he managed to catch her with the Hirshin no Jutsu, his kunai wire, and chakra chain movements plus his speed. The two carried on with their race until they were inside of the pier that was the safe haven, but Naruto was quickly able to react Selena, and suddenly reached the special container she used to hide the painting in. The two managed to duke it out in a fight, but Naruto still managed to hold on, even with Selena using not just her claws, but her whip as well. Naruto quickly took a few smoke bombs, and in a complete reversal of last time, he blinded her and moved in quickly through the smoke, and made his move. Just as Selena got away from the smoke and soon they were facing each other, they fought once more, and soon it came to a point that they both fell off the building, and Naruto used his chakra chain to latch on the building and catch Catwoman as they looked at one another. A thief smiled at the rescue as he moved to the other building, and soon they were only a few steps away from the pier. Selena opened the container and rolled it open to find that she got only a blank sheet, and she looked at Naruto to reveal that he had the painting, meaning that he won. Selena sighed at this and knew that the jig was up and looked at Naruto, who smiled warmly underneath his mask. 2 days later at night, Naruto was very happy with himself as he was now taking a train away from Gotham and heading out of the city. He decided to head back to Los Angeles and stay there for a while, until he was done with what he needed to do for his books. In his bag were a number of pictures that had Selena Kyle as the model. The blonde woman was not too keen on it at first, but after some time, she agreed to it, and she wore a number of clothes and dresses that she had on hand that he found very nice. The party dress look, the simple business-like look, and a few others, all non-threatening, but very attractive in Naruto's eye. But the highlights of the pictures included Selena wearing what was a two-piece swimsuit which was deep black with gold hoops, and also a simple one-piece suit that had oval shapes to reveal her stomach and back, and managed to hold her bust. All of which were done alongside Isis in her apartment, and truth be told, Selena was quite surprised that her pet cat, a very discerning judge of character, actually liked Naruto. The blonde was also pleased that unlike the last cat he had to deal with, Isis did not try to turn his face to confetti, and that seemed to confirm to Selena that she could trust Naruto well enough. The whole thing took at least a few hours, all the way to lunch, for which he personally bought with his own money, and even bought Isis a few treats of fish, making Selena smirk a bit at his attitude, and the fact that he was a very nice guy. Even though it was fairly obvious that he was no saint, since she did catch him looking at her in a less than pure fashion. Still, once it was over, he made sure to keep his word, and for the last 3 days, he left her to her own devices, if she ever decided to take back being Catwoman. Which was a good thing in his mind, and he made sure to not bother her again. It was not just Selena though, apparently Ivy had taken a shot at his offer, and he had indeed helped her on a few things to get the factory closed down, and the owners swimming in so many legal problems, and being protested that they decided to close down the factory. That also meant that Ivy could now take over and clean up the mess covertly. She was not too sold on the idea just yet, and he expected that to be the case, but that hardly meant that he and by extension Pamela, did not get to try things out. And sure enough, he enjoyed teasing and flirting with Pamela, who reacted naturally enough, despite the fact that she was still unsure how to react to being with a man who was someone who could not be poisoned by her. He took things slowly and began to really heat things up between them a bit, so she was used to it, and despite her instance that this was not going to change her ways like that, her moaning and groaning was telling him that he was on the right path to something with her. It was not too long though, and despite her denials at times, he could tell that Pamela had enjoyed herself. That was why he made sure to tell her that he had decided to be on call for her, if she ever needed someone to talk to as well as keep her company. It made the whole thing a lot more interesting, since one had to know the fact that he was the only man thus far who was not harmed by her in any stretch of the imagination. She replied that she would keep that in mind, but she warned him not to get any ideas. He also ran into Zatanna as she was getting her stuff loaded into her truck for another trip around the country, though in this case that was last night when he was able to find her. Someone with as much chakra as she did mixed with that other energy was not too hard to miss, and after some time chatting in his disguise, she decided to let him take some pictures of her, which she then signed with her in her costume, which to him was more than enough. The only problem he had before he packed up was meeting that massive figure of a zombie Solomon Grundy. The creature came barreling into a nearby train station that apparently had a shipment of gold being taken in. And on the same night, as well as his meeting with Zatanna, so off he went to deal with the new foe that ruined this night of his. However, once he saw the being thrashed through the guards and attack them and sensed that he was dead already, it brought back memories of his encounters with ghosts and undead, namely of Hidan and Kakazu, the immortal pair of Akatsuki. He disliked them immensely since they had killed Asuma and left Kurenai a widow and their son fatherless, and while it was something to expect given their lives as Konoha ninja, it hardly meant that they liked it. He personally fought Kakazu while Shikamaru personally defeated Hidan and sealed that bastard away. Solomon Grundy was not in the same league as those two, namely in the brains and justice department, but he was tough. He managed to stop him from harming any more guards, but had to resort to Senjutsu to deal with this guy, since the magical energy that kept him alive seemed to be affected by it. Naruto was not too sure what was it that brought this dude back to life, but he could tell that it was not the same as Kabuto and Orochimaru's Impure World Resurrection Jutsu, so he was going to have to go all out. He and Grundy tore through the train station, and while the zombie got some hard hits in, the durability he got from his Senjutsu form held him even the odds, as he landed blow after blow as well on the former living man. Grundy was less than pleased and tried to squash him more than once, and used anything he could to swat him, which was why Naruto used his frog kumite style to knock him around even more, until he reverted to something a lot more effective. He summoned the chakra he needed, and despite it not being his chakra affinity, this worked well enough on the undead as far as he had seen. Kaiten. Takakyu no Jutsu. The massive fireball slammed into Grundy and sent him screaming in absolute pain, as Naruto quickly followed that up with a Rasengan attack that sent the massive zombie flying into a collection of fuel drums, and that was soon followed by a massive fireball of an explosion, as the fuel went boom. As soon as that was over, off he went to go back to LA, but not before sending his news novel to his employer, and this had the theme of the hero dealing with a woman with one serious green thumb, and a lady with a deep connection to cats, though he made sure to make some changes just to be on the safe side. As for Batman and company, they were still surprised at the news of Naruto's activities, and wondered just how he had been able to avoid them for so long. But what really got the interest of the group were the reports of him fighting Grundy and unleashing a fireball from his mouth, according to witnesses who were not caught in the crossfire of the battle. Bruce knew that it took a lot of force to beat Grundy in fire alone, while harmful was not enough to kill the reanimated being. And that was enough to tell him that Grundy was not going to forget the Hokage or what he had done to him. Robin was not too happy as it turned out the room was not even being rented by anyone, and that meant he was led by the nose, and that grated on the young crime fighter, more than he cared to admit. There was also the report that some of the homeless people had said that Ivy was seen in the Hokage's company, and she seemed to be rather calm, and seemed to be at ease with the man. That was something he had not expected and only served to confuse him even more, as he knew how she could easily kill with a kiss, so how the Hokage was alive around her added to the whole mess. As for Clark, the guy's ability to sense him before he could even see him confused the Kryptonian, since as far as he knew, he did not emit any energy waves that could be seen easily. This added more to the whole deal, and he knew that Bruce was not all too keen on things. The Hokage had now disappeared as the last they had heard of him was that battle with Grundy, and as he gathered the reports for the Daily Planet, there was no doubts in his mind that sooner or later, things were going to come to a head. They were not the only ones to take notice, however. On an island far away from the modern world. Are you sure that you have been sensing those changes, Mala? Yes, my queen, every now and then, I sense the shifting of the world's natural flow of energy, as if it was being taken to a central point, and then as soon as a large amount was taken, it stopped. It was as if someone or something is actually able to tap into the very flow of energy and redirect it. But it did not feel like the energy was being violated. How so? Almost as if the person or persons who did it was not fighting or bringing nature under his or their wills, but allowing it to flow into them and settle. That kind of skill is unlike what I have sensed before, but I have heard stories of people with magic being able to do such feats. I see. Mother, can it really be coming from man's world? I do not know, but as long as it is not being done here, we have little to fear. What happens out there is not our concern, daughter. We have no need to be concerned with the affairs of men. Alright, mother, but I cannot help but be curious. You were always the curious one, my little sun and stars, but place that aside for now. Your sister is waiting for you in the training hall. Yes, mother. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.